Greetings, aspirants. Hope you all are doing well. Welcome to the Daily Current Affairs News Analysis by CivicCentre IAS of Vignan series, where we try to discuss the relevant articles from the Hindu, the Indian Express, and the PIB from the UPSC CSC prelims perspective. Displayed are the list of topics which we are going to discuss in today's video. So the first article says that in Iran, Gadkari emphasizes importance of Chahbahar Port. In this context, let us talk about the Chahbahar Port and also we'll talk about the Chahbahar project. For firstly, talking about the Chahbahar Port, see it is a deep water port which is located in Iran's Sistan Baluchistan province. Know that it is on the Gulf of Oman at the mouth of the Strait of Hormuz. Significantly, it is the only Iranian port having direct access to the Indian Ocean. Further, it is described by the 10th century Iranian scholar Al-Biruni as the entry point to the subcontinent. Notably, its geographical proximity to the countries such as the Afghanistan, Pakistan and India, as well as its status as a key transit center on the burgeoning international north-south transport corridor, gives it the potential to develop into one of the most important commercial hubs in the region. Now, what is this INSTC about? See, it is a multimodal transportation route linking the Indian Ocean and the Persian Gulf to the Caspian Sea via Iran and onward to northern Europe via St. Petersburg in Russia. Notably, Kandla Port in Gujarat is 550 nautical miles from Chahbahar Port, while the distance between the Chahbahar Port and Mumbai is 786 nautical miles. Now, moving on to talk about the Chahbahar project. So, in May 2016, India signed a tripartite agreement with Iran and Afghanistan to develop the Shahid Beheshti terminal at Chahbahar. Interestingly, it is the India's first foreign port project. So, the deal agreement aims to establish an international transport and transit corridor in Chahbahar. Further, the construction of the Chahbahar port and the construction of a rail line from the Chahbahar port to Zahedan are the major highlights of this project. See, the idea was that the port would enable India to bypass Pakistan and access Afghanistan, and this will ultimately lead to the Central Asia. Moreover, the port could not serve as a hub for transit trade between India, Iran and Afghanistan and provide an alternative route to the traditional Silk Road that passes through China. The next article says that out of the 150 deaths due to Influenza A, which is also called the H1N1, recorded across India till the June end, Punjab recorded the most at 41 cases, followed by Gujarat at 27 and Haryana at 26 as per the Health Ministry data. In this context, let us talk about the various aspects related to influenza virus. So what about it? See, the Influenza A variant subtype H1N1, which is also commonly the cause of swine flu in humans. It has similar genetic features to the H1N1 subtype of influenza virus that causes us influenza in pigs. Know that the swine flu is a highly contagious respiratory disease in pigs caused by one of the several swine flu influenza A viruses. Talking about its transmission, the transmission of the swine flu influenza viruses to humans is very uncommon. However, the swine influenza virus can be transmitted to humans via contact with infected pigs or environments contaminated with swine influenza viruses. Now, moving on to talk about the symptoms, you can see there are cough, fever, sore throat, stuffy or runny nose, headache, body ache, etc. With respect to diagnosis, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention recommend real-time polymerase chain reaction as the method of choice for diagnosing H1N1. Know that the prevention of swine influenza has three components, which are prevention in swine, prevention of transmission to humans, and prevention of its spread among the humans. Furthermore, the Center for the Disease Control of Prevention recommends annual flu vaccination for everyone at the age of 6 months or older. Also, the H1N1 virus is included in the seasonal flu vaccine. Lastly, antiviral drugs are the mainstay of clinical treatment of swine influenza. The next article says that there is no plan to review the curbs placed on the Chinese investments in India via foreign direct investment, according to the Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal. Also, he stressed, noting the suggestions to reconsider the restrictions made by the authors of the economic survey are not binding. In this context, let us talk about the various aspects related to the foreign direct investment, which is also in short called the FDI. So what is FDI? It is an investment made by a firm or an individual in one country into the business interests located in another country. So the FDI lets an investor purchase a direct business interest in a foreign country. Further, the investments can make FDI in a number of ways. Some common ones include establishing a subsidiary in other country, acquiring or merging an existing foreign company, or starting a joint venture partnership with a foreign company. Significantly, apart from being a critical driver of economic growth, FDI has been a major non-debt financial resource for the economic development of India. Know that they flow in the primary market. So there are two routes of FDI in India. First is the automatic route, where the foreign entity does not require the prior approval of the government or the RBI. And the later one is the government route, where the foreign entity has to take the approval of the government. Know that the Foreign Investment Facilitation Portal facilitates the single window clearance of applications which are through the approval route. Please note that it is administered by the Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade and the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. Significantly, the top 5 sectors receiving the highest FDI equity inflow during the financial year 2022 and 2023 are the services sector, computer software and hardware, trading, telecommunications, and automobile industry. Now, if we have to talk about the top 5 countries for the FDI equity inflows into India, for the financial year 2022-23, they are Mauritius, Singapore, United States of America, Netherlands, and Japan. Now, if we look at the top 5 states receiving the highest FDI equity inflow during the financial year 2022-23, they are Maharashtra, Karnataka, Gujarat, Delhi, and Tamil Nadu. But you have to know that FDI is prohibited in few sectors. Those are retail trading, except the single brand product retailing, atomic energy, lottery gambling and betting, including the casinos, etc., chit fund, nidhi company, agriculture and plantations other than the tea plantations, real estate or construction of farmhouses, and manufacturing of cigars or tobacco. Lastly, note that the foreign investment was introduced in the year 1991 under the Foreign Exchange Management Act, FEMA. The next article says that the Reserve Bank of India (RBI) issued master direction on treatment of willful and large defaulters, laying down a regulatory framework and procedures for the classification of borrowers as willful defaulters. In this context, let us talk about willful defaulters. So, who are these willful defaulters? The RBI redefines the willful defaulters as the borrowers who meet one or more of the following criteria, which are the first one being deliberate non-payment of dues despite having sufficient funds. Secondly, diverting the loan funds for the purposes other than what they were borrowed for. And thirdly, siphoning of the loan funds so they are unavailable for repayment. Notably, the minimum loan amount for a borrower to be labelled as a willful defaulter is 25 lakh rupees and above. Further, a large defaulter refers to a borrower with an outstanding balance of rupees 1 crore or more whose account has been categorized as doubtful or a loss. So, if the banks in their internal preliminary screenings find that a borrower has willfully defaulted on a loan, they would have to complete the entire process of categorizing the borrower as a willful defaulter within 6 months of time. The next article says that the budget documents made public earlier this week shows that the basic custom duty on the laboratory chemicals, which is a very critical component of research, has been hiked to 150% from the existing 10%. In this context, let us briefly touch upon the concept of customs duty. So what is customs duty? See, customs duty refers to the tax which is imposed on the goods when they are transported across international borders. In simple terms, it is a tax that is levied on import and export of goods. Know that the government uses this duty to raise its revenues, safeguard domestic industries, and regulate movement of goods. Notably, the rate of customs duty varies depending upon where the goods were made and what they were made of. Significantly, the customs duty in India is defined under the Customs Act of 1962, and all the matters relating to it fall under the Central Board of Excise and Customs, in short called the CBEC. Lastly, you have to know that there are 5 types of customs duty, which are basic customs duty, countervailing duty, additional customs duty, protective duty, and anti-dumping duty. The article from the PIB dated 30th July says that the Atomic Energy Regulatory Board has officially granted the permission for the first approach to criticality of 500 megawatt electric prototype fast breeder reactor at Kalapakkam, Tamil Nadu, which is India's first prototype fast breeder reactor. This critical milestone includes the loading of fuel into the reactor core and the initiation of low power physics experiments. In this context, let us talk about the relevant aspects from the article. Firstly, talking about the Atomic Energy Regulatory Board, see, it is a regulatory body in India that oversees the safe use of nuclear energy and radiation sources. Know that it was established in the year 1983 as an independent body under the Atomic Energy Act of 1962. Significantly, the primary objective of this AERB is to ensure that the use of nuclear energy and radiation sources does not cause any harm to people, property, or the environment. Now, what is a FBR or the fast breeder reactor? See, a fast breeder reactor is a type of nuclear reactor that uses fast neutrons to cause the fission of the uranium 238, which is unlike the conventional nuclear reactors that use the slow neutrons. Notably, the term breeder refers to the ability of these reactors to produce more fissile material of plutonium 239 that they consume. And significantly, the fast breeder reactor is the key to India's 3-stage nuclear power program. Know that the Bharatiya Nabhikhiya Vidyut Nigam Limited, or the Bhavani, was incorporated to build and operate the India's most advanced nuclear reactor, which the prototype fast breeder reactor. So, once commissioned, India will be the only second country after Russia to have a commercial operating fast breeder reactor. It initially employs uranium plutonium mixed oxide fuel and liquid sodium coolant and is set to be operational by December 2024. Hence, by producing more plutonium than the fuel it consumes, the prototype fast breeder reactor reduces the nuclear waste and is relatively safer than conventional reactors. Further, talking about the term core loading, it is the process of placing nuclear fuel assemblies inside the core of a nuclear reactor. So, the completion of the core loading will effectively mark the first approach to criticality. Note that criticality is the initiation of a self-sustaining nuclear fission reaction that will eventually lead to the generation of power by the 500 megawatt electric fast breeder reactor. The next article says that a month since the outbreak of Chandipura acute viral encephalitis in Gujarat, the state has reported 137 patients with suspected infection, among which 51 have tested positive for the virus as on Tuesday. In this context, let us talk about the various aspects related to the Chandipura virus. So, the Chandipura virus is a member of the family Vesiculovirus genus within the Rhabdoviridae family, which includes the rabies virus. Notably, it was first isolated in the year 1965 from the blood of 2 adults with a febrile illness in Chandipura village of Nagpur in Maharashtra. So it is named after the village it was discovered in. It was isolated again in the year 1980 from a patient with acute encephalitis in Madhya Pradesh. Now, how is the virus transmitted? See, the virus is vector-borne and is primarily believed to be transmitted by the female phlebotomin sandfly, which is especially prevalent during early monsoon. Additionally, other potential vectors include Sargentomia sandflies and various species of mosquitoes, particularly Aedes aegypti under the laboratory conditions. But there is no reported isolation of the virus from the mosquitoes in natural settings as of the 2016 study. Now, talking about the symptoms of it, it causes encephalitis leading to inflammation or swelling of the brain tissue. Further, the clinical manifestations include a rapid onset of fever, vomiting, altered sensorium which leads to changes in mental status or consciousness, convulsions, diarrhea, neurological defects, and meningeal irritation. Significantly, the population it primarily affects is the children under the age of 15, especially in rural areas. Now, talking about its treatment, there is no specific antiviral treatment or vaccine available, so early diagnosis and supportive care are very crucial. Further, the management includes airway, breathing, and circulation support through oxygen therapy and ventilation, fluid and electrolyte balance, management of hypoxia, which is extremely high fever, raised intracranial pressure, and seizures, and lastly, prevention of secondary bacterial infections. Now, moving on to its prevention, the various vector control measures are very important, which are firstly identifying and spraying insecticides in sandfly breeding sites, then improving sanitation and environmental control through proper waste disposal, stopping open air defecation, thirdly, usage of fly paper, and lastly, preventing bites through protective clothing, repellents, and nets. The next article says that the NHRC on Tuesday issued notices to the centre and the Delhi government in connection to the incident in which three IAS aspirants drowned in the flooded basement library of a coaching institute in Delhi. In this context, let us talk about various aspects related to the National Human Rights Commission, in short called the NHRC. So the NHRC of India was established on 12th of October in 1993. The statute under which it is established is the Protection of Human Rights Act PHRA of 1993 as amended by the Protection of Human Rights Amendment Act of 2006. You have to know that it is in conformity with the Paris Principles which are adopted at the first international workshop on national institutions for the promotion and protection of human rights which was held in Paris in October 1991. Now, talking about its functions, firstly, it inquires into the complaints of human rights violations by public servants. Then, it intervenes in court proceedings, which involves human rights violations with court approval. Thirdly, visiting the jails or state-controlled institutions to study the living conditions and make recommendations. Next, it assesses the constitutional and legal safeguards for human rights and suggests improvements. Then, it reviews the factors like terrorism that hinder the human rights and recommends solutions to it. Further, it studies the international human rights treaties and makes recommendations accordingly. Next, it encourages and conducts the research in human rights. Then it also promotes the human rights literacy and awareness. And lastly, it encourages NGOs and institutions working in human rights. Now, moving on to look at the powers of the NHRC. Firstly, the civil court powers include summoning and examining the witnesses on oath, then requesting the documents and public records, then receiving the evidence via affidavits, and lastly, it issues commissions for the examining the witnesses and documents. Further, it suggests compensation for the victims of the human rights violations. Also, it seeks enforcement of human rights in the Supreme Court or the High Courts. Lastly, it can also take suo motu cognizance of human rights violations without a formal complaint. The next article says that the government's decision to slash customs duty on gold to 6% from 15% has dampened the spirits of the sovereign gold bond investors. There is fear that their returns may diminish with a lower than expected redemption value. In this context, let us talk about the various aspects related to the sovereign gold bonds. So what are these sovereign gold bonds? See, the sovereign gold bonds are the government securities which are denominated in grams of gold, and know that they are the substitutes for holding the physical gold. Hence, the investors pay the issue price only. Notably, the Reserve Bank of India issues the sovereign gold bonds on behalf of the government of India. But why do we have to prefer like sovereign gold bonds instead of physical gold? See, these are the reasons are: firstly, the quantity of gold is protected as investors receive the market price at redemption. Secondly, it eliminates the associated storage risks and costs. Thirdly, it assures the market value of the gold at maturity and provides periodic interest. Then it is free from issues like making charges and purity concerns associated with the jewelry. And lastly, the bonds are held in the RBI's books or in demat form, thus eliminating the risk of losing physical scrip. Now, who all are eligible to invest in these sovereign gold bonds? Firstly, the residents of India as defined under the Foreign Exchange Management Act of 1999 are eligible. Then the eligible investors, including the individuals, Hindu undivided families, trusts, universities, and charitable institutions, are eligible. Lastly, the individuals who become non-residents after the investments can continue to hold the sovereign gold bonds till early redemption or maturity. The next article says that the Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi addressed the inaugural session of Journey Towards Viksit Bharat, a post-Union Budget 2024-25 conference, which was organized by the Confederation of Indian Industry, in short called the CII, at Vignan Bhavan in New Delhi today. Further, the conference aims to present the outline of government's larger vision for growth and the industry's role. In this context, let us talk about the Confederation of the Indian Industry, in short called the CII. Firstly, it is to create and sustain an environment that is conducive to India's development. Further, it partners with industry, government, and civil society through advisory and consultative processes. Know that it is a non-government and not-for-profit organization which is industry-led and industry-managed. Further, the membership includes around 9,000 private and public sector entities, including the SMEs and the MNCs. Additionally, it also includes an indirect membership of over 365,000 enterprises from 294 national and regional sectoral industry bodies. Now, if you have to look at the key functions of the body, it collaborates closely with the government on policy issues. It also interfaces with the thought leaders, and it also enhances the efficiency, competitiveness, and business opportunities through specialized services and strategic global linkages. Lastly, it provides a platform for consensus building and networking on key issues. Lastly, if you have to talk about the centers of excellence and the initiatives, see, first it focuses on industry competitiveness and innovation, technology adoption, and sustainability partnerships. It further promotes the corporate citizenship programs in areas such as affirmative action, livelihoods, diversity management, skill development, empowerment of women, sustainable development. So, the theme for the year 2024-25 is Globally Competitive India, Partnerships for Sustainable and Inclusive Growth. It prioritizes 5 key pillars to drive India's global competitiveness and growth through a robust and resilient industry. So we are done with the today's discussion where we tried to discuss 10 articles from the Hindu, the Indian Express and the PIB from the UPSC CSA preliminary perspective. We'll be back again with another video tomorrow.